All right.
Just
what?
Have a question.
Is it on? Hi.
What are the obvious signs that the man is using you?
Mm. The most obvious signs that a man's using you?
Except that he says that he's using you, but doing something obvious which women do not see or needs to recognize.
Uh, that they don't see or needs to recognize more? Well, a lot of that is being people, I think a lot of times, men and women in the same situation, they're like willfully blind. Does that make sense? They're willfully blind to the obvious signs that are happening, right? Number one would be the communication, right?
Can you specify?
Yeah, the person's not messaging you. Like there's a certain time period between messages or callbacks.
What is normal?
What is normal? Each relationship's a little bit different, but the reality is like this is where it comes up where being in touch with like yourself and like your emotions and like feeling that kind of other world that's going on is so important because you'll know within yourself, right? If it's like, oh God, it's too long, right? We all fucking know. We all know when it's too long. We have our moments where the person was doing something else and then all of a sudden, you know, they looked at the message, they were going to do it, but then someone started talking to them and then they forgot, right? That happens, but that's not a normal thing. So generally, at the start of the relationship and for the first few months, if there's a time period that you messaged and then that person messages back, that's kind of your standard, right? Your average. And then if it starts to get longer than that, then you know that there's something kind of going on where the person's kind of moving in some other direction. That doesn't mean that they want to break up or whatever, right? But that does mean that there's something going on with that person, whether or not it's with you or it's something inside of themselves or work stuff or whatever, right? Like you can use that communication thing as a way to gauge your partner as well, to see like, okay, maybe something's going on with this person. We have a tendency to believe that it's always about us, right? Right? Like that's we're like, oh, they're getting distant because of me, right? Or because of the relationship. A lot of being a good partner, right? Being in a healthy relationship is giving that person space, but also observing them and understanding and being able to read them so that you know when you need to step in and help, right? And you're always open to them coming to you and saying, hey, you know, this has been happening at work, or, you know, this happened with my parents or, you know, my family or whatever, right? And not automatically going up to them and, you know, their time period of messaging is off. They're a little distant at home. They're staying out too much. They're kind of thinking off in the distance when they're around you. Things have changed some. The first reaction that we think of is you know, it's a problem. And it probably is, right? It might be. But it doesn't have to be the problem with the relationship. So yeah, being a good partner is just like noticing that, not thinking automatically that it's about the relationship, but like, what's going on with you? You know, is there something going on? Whatever. If they're not telling you, that's okay. Like, keep that distance, but keep the door open to them talking to you. Now, there is a time period where if they stay distant long enough, no matter what the problem is, then, you know, you need to make a decision because then it starts to become unhealthy for you. So I don't know. Did I answer?
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
You did. What is the other obvious sign that the man is using you? Okay, we found out that conversation is number one. We need to be more sensitive about, more like observant about.
Yeah.
What is the other sign? Like, what are the signs that the man is taking advantage of you and then what disappears? Actions are actually.
Well, yeah. I mean, if he's asking you for money and then he leaves, obviously, right? We deal with that a lot here, actually. I know it's funny, but like, we deal with that shit a lot here.
That's right.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe you were saying the same thing because we're in Cambodia. We deal with that a lot when it comes to men being in relationships specifically for the money from the woman, which is kind of interesting because in the West we don't really. It's a lot kind of the other way, but here it's totally that way, and they fall into it too. You know, BB has friends that fall into that, where they're like, you know, they're from a certain part of the world, they come here, they're sought after in this country, and they become very wealthy or have a lot of money, and then some people that maybe don't have as much money will show up and they'll start to date them specifically so that, you know, BB's friends will pay their bills or whatever, right? And for some reason, I don't know, BB's friends like think that's love, and like, yeah, but you know, these assholes are the ones that manipulate that and use that shit against you. What?
Yeah.
What'd you point at?
Look at the camera.
I'm looking at the camera.
No, you're looking at me.
I'm looking at you. Can I look at you now? Is that better?
Yeah. Look at me through the camera.
Look at you through the camera. Sorry. So yeah, like they, we deal with scumbag pieces of shit here a lot of times, that are looking to take advantage of a woman's want for love and, you know, compassion, right? Like, and closeness. But yeah, so when it comes to the signs, the money thing, right? If that dude's asking you for money and then like not like giving it back to you and you don't like have a joint bank account, and get rid of that fucking guy. Like, that guy's got to go, right? Isn't that what easy? That guy's get the gotta get him out of there, right? So the money thing, yes. And then what was the next one? What are some other things? Not really talking much after sex. Mm-hmm. That's kind of a big one. Whether like, you know, you guys have sex and then he's like, all right, well, see you next week. You know, like that's
and then he appears next week.
Yeah, then he appears next week. That's a problem, right? It's kind of fucking.
We still see it as love.
Yeah.
He's busy.
Yeah. Oh, he's so busy and he's working so hard. Yet I'm giving him all this money. Yeah. The sex thing after sex, yeah, for sure. And it's not about cuddling, right? Like, a lot of us aren't really cuddlers, right? A lot of times because it's so hot, anyways, right? It's like, you know, two wet fish, right? That's disgusting. That sounded bad, right?
Yeah.
Take that back. Strike it. We'll edit that out. No, we won't. No, we won't, because we don't edit shit. Yeah. After sex, if they just kind of bail and leave, or like they're like, oh, we'll come, you know, I'll call you tomorrow, right? That's not good. That's definitely a big sign that the person's using you. What are some other signs that guys are using women? I'm like, how did I use women? Which is, you know, I told you in the last video, like, I was not a very good, fucking awesome person back in the day. I feel like I have a different perspective on these people because they're pieces of shit. And I was a piece of shit, right? So trying to be honest with you guys. So I like to like think about the stupid shit that maybe I did, or like some things I thought about doing. Being in a relationship like that and feeling like there's distance and this person's taking advantage of you. A lot of it is just your feeling towards it, right? If you feel safe with that person, like real safe, like warm safe, where they're like, you're with them and it feels like kind of nothing else, right, that you've ever had. That's generally a pretty good relationship. Now, do they feel that way about you? I don't know, right? But they can show you. Men are a lot about actions, right? We're not overly about emotion and about what we say. We're a lot about like what we do.
That's what I wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
Is like one of the signs of men using women might be promises too.
Yeah.
Promising something and not doing it more than one time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, promises. I don't make promises because I don't know what the fuck's gonna happen tomorrow. I don't make promises, right? The only time I make promises are like within the day, right? So if men are making promises to you about like what's going to happen in the future, right? Unless they're a fucking wizard, like there's no possible way that they know that, right? They don't know how their brain's going to change or how their emotions are going to change or what's going to happen in the world or whatever, right? And if they're not married to you, then yeesh, right? Like that's not a good thing. Promises are just a setup to be feeling like shit and to destroy relationships. That's what promises do. That I've noticed. Now everybody has their own perspective on it, but for me, stay away from the promises. If God's giving you promise like, you know, I'm going to love you forever and I'm going to take care of you forever and I'm going to pay for everything forever and like, yeah, okay, what happens if the market crashes and you ain't got no fucking money anymore, dude? Then what, right? And you, the woman, has the money. Does that mean he's still going to pay? Like, there's no possible way to know all those things. So when somebody's telling you that shit, they're playing you. They're trying to manipulate. And whether they're doing it maliciously or not, it really doesn't matter because there's a lot of insecurity that happens within men or people, but men is why we do the promises because we're like, we have to get you to like us the most, right? And we're also somewhat, it's either a control thing. We want to like control you, or we want to make sure that you don't look at other men, right? Or like have that as an option, right? It's completely an insecurity thing. I think that promises a lot of times are insecurity, where they're just trying to get you to feel really good. And then what happens is now all of a sudden you trust them and they're not very strong within themselves. So they're going to end up taking advantage of your trust. That's what happens. That's kind of like your first sign when like somebody's promising a lot. There's a good chance in the future they're gonna take advantage of you and take advantage of the trust that they've gained from you. So be careful of promises, big time. What else? Nothing.